Welcome to Project Insight's Professional Development Series. Today's session, How PMOs Support Executive Decision Making, explores a challenge many project managers and PMO leaders experience every day: keeping work moving when priorities are unclear, decisions are delayed, and trade-offs are difficult to see. As organizations grow more complex, we want leadership to turn to PMOs for faster, better decisions. A few housekeeping notes. Everyone will be on mute. If you have any questions, please feel free to use the chat as we go along. Thank you for those who have been participating already. This is valid for one PDU that will be accessible or sent to you before the end of the week, so long as you attend the end of this live session. If you are joining in the future, you can access this same recording at this link you've joined from. Today we have Steve West, CEO and co-founder of Project Insight. Steve has decades of experience helping organizations manage every aspect of projects, programs, and portfolios with Project Insight. And we're excited to be joined by Brian Lemmings, founder of EightyTenTen. Brian brings more than 20 years of experience in IT, PMO leadership, and project delivery. Brian, will you share a little bit more about yourself with us, please?
Yeah, man, I appreciate it. So I've spent the last 20 years or so working within, or just around PMOs. What I've learned during that time is that most of your project delivery issues or delivery problems are not people problems. They're going to be your system problems. So today, what I wanted to focus on is the work I've been doing, which is helping businesses and organizations fix how work moves through their system. So leaders can see information clearly, can decide faster, and stop depending on heroics to get results. And I'm really excited, Steve and Matt, to speak with you guys today.
Yeah, we're glad you're here. What's wrong with heroics?
What's wrong with what? With heroics? Well, heroics from what's what we rely on. The people are the heroes for sure.
Exactly.
Well, we're excited to have you with us here, Brian. So jump right in.
I appreciate it. So let's just jump on in, right? So I'm going to take the view today that the audience is here from a PM perspective, project management perspective, and a PMO leadership perspective. So, our goal as PMs and as PMO leaders is to keep the expected work moving through the system, despite unclear priorities, despite delayed directions or decisions, and despite the shifting direction. So, as they go through this, these are the jobs the job description that nobody has written down. So what it looks like from a project management perspective is that as a PM, you're tracking everything, right? You're updating statuses, you're following up constantly, you're doing everything that you were told a good project manager does. And if you're the PMO leader, you're watching it happen across every project at one time. You're being asked why delivery keeps stalling. You're trying to fix a system that, while at the same time being held accountable for outcomes that you don't fully control. And still, as you can see, what I have here, everything feels off. Projects are moving slower than they should. Decisions take longer than they should. And no matter how much effort goes in, it just doesn't seem to change the outcome. Mm-hmm. Now, this is what I want to make sure you hear. It's not because we're doing something wrong. It's not a people problem. It's because most of the systems that we work inside were never designed to support clear, timely decision making. And that's what I want to talk about today.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. Thanks.
Yes. So if you look at this next slide, what is it that we're actually looking at? So I'm sure that you all have been through this before. So where does this work coming from? So we all know that it doesn't come in clean, right? It comes in from every direction of the organization. It could come from a leadership request. It could come from an urgent issue that pops up. It could be a quick drive-by, whether it's on Teams or Slack, or for those of us that are old enough to go into the office, those quick drive-bys at the desk, or that sudden high priority that happened that morning. Most of the time, as we're getting this work, it's not a fully defined activity. So scope may not be clear if it even exists. Outcomes are oftentimes fuzzy. Sometimes the why, right, isn't even fully understood.
That's super common.
Yeah. I mean, what essentially we've been handed is this giant expensive question mark, right? Mm-hmm. The work we have to do as a project manager, the work we have to do as a PMO lead, it's really trying to figure out, or part of that is trying to figure out what the actual definition that we need to go after. So Where does it fit? Where does it matter the most? What can we realistically get done in that time frame? And for most organizations, I've found that it's just not very clear.
Yeah.
So when the decisions aren't happening when they should happen. So things are getting delayed. Decisions are being revisited for the 13th time. Why are we doing this project? What are the resource needs that we have? What's the goal of the project? Or they're made informally. So as you're walking down the hallway, or again, Slack and Teams are really big culprits of where decisions get made. And when they're made outside of the system, it never makes it back into that system itself. And that's where we see the role of a project manager begins to shift. So instead of moving the work forward, we're busy chasing answers where we should already have that information. So you can see in bright blue, we're not just managing the work, we're managing the gaps around that work. So
I've definitely had that feeling.
Yeah, I mean, you guys know from both the delivery side of working with individual teams and project managers, and from the leadership side, right? So business owners, your C-level, that slowdown of decisions, that slowdown of that slow movement, it keeps the unknown, keeps that leadership wondering why they can't get a clear answer. Why are decisions coming back, or why are projects stalled? Why do you keep getting asked the same information and still don't feel like you're ready to make that decision? And that gap between what the leaders need to know, what they need to decide on, and what the system's actually giving you is exactly what we want to talk about today, and what we want to fix.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Next slide.
So let's take a step back just a bit and look at where our time's actually going. So if we look on the left-hand side, this is today. This is the work that project managers are doing and PMO leaders are doing. But I want you to notice that most of this on the left is not focused on delivery at all, right? It's mostly spent on everything. Yeah. So you're chasing updates, you're following up on decisions, you're fixing issues that showed up late. But that actual delivery work, that's at the bottom, and it's the smallest slice of where the time is being spent. Now, when we get stuck there, right, when the leaders or the leadership team is only getting information on that left-hand side, they don't get the clarity that they need for decisions to make, right? They're just getting noise. They're getting status updates, red, green, yellow, instead of getting driven to what the decisions that have to be made to move that project forward. And, I often say that they're getting information, they're not getting insight.
Yeah. So can you give an example of like chasing and updates and alignment? How does that end up happening?
Yeah. So a lot of times it is from the, we see from the project management perspective, the project manager perspective, it could be teams are overwhelmed on what they're trying to do. The same 5 people are working on, the 6 strategic projects. So if it's the same 5 people, they often don't know, or often aren't able to keep up with that sort of update of where we are, that meaningful update of where we are. It's the, are things done? Yes or no, right? It's not the, are things done? Yes, but we're going to see these risks, like we foresee these risks happening, or we foresee these issues that are coming up. So, when the information gets to the project manager, and then the project manager is delivering that out, whether that's to the stakeholders or the sponsors or to the PMO itself, there's that gap of that necessary information, again, sort of drive that decision making as it goes, which we see on that right-hand side, that if we can move away from chasing updates, if we can move away from, asking 3 or 4 times for a decision to be made by from a leader or from a sponsor, if we can move away from that activity, we can set up a process for defining how decisions are made. That's where we begin to look at that right-hand side of that work effort. So it flips that picture, right? So now that PM is focused not just at the top, but focused at the top important things. So framing the decisions, clarifying priorities, surfacing questions or surfacing issues or risk when it needs action, not necessarily when it needed to be done 2 or 3 days ago. And so that focused input at the very top allows and creates space for that greater delivery to expand. So they're able to deliver with momentum, and that becomes that largest piece of what that PM is doing versus the chasing, which we have on that other side, right? So as we go through that focus on the right-hand side, the focus on the system that is what I call a project operating system. As we focus on that, providing the foundation for project managers, project teams, stakeholders. When we focus on working on that right side, the leaders get the information that they need. They get that clean, line of sight. They get the visible trade-offs. Here are the consequences. Here are the good things that could happen. Here are the things that we want to try to avoid if we can, to mitigate for. And then the confidence in making those decisions becomes easier. So that overload today of chasing that gap or trying to fill that gap gets brought in more. And so the PMs aren't overloaded by that work. They're overloaded by everything around. So if we can move to that far right-hand side, it allows the decisions to move faster from a delivery perspective.
So why do executives get stuck answering and delayed? How does that end up happening?
Now, so from what I've seen and spoken with leadership, that delay, I call that decision drag. So if we look at that, the next slide, so that the inability for that decision to be made, on time or right when they need it to be made, can be caused by different reasons. As we look at this slide here, I put out four of the reasons that I see that really is causing this decision drag, which is you can see here on the screen, by definition, it's just what happens when decisions don't occur when they should. So it shows up in 4 different ways. So one of them is that the information is late or it's buried. It could be buried in systems that nobody's looking at, could be buried in emails, could be buried in somebody's head. And so that no one knows what it is that they need to decide upon. The second part of that is trade-offs aren't visible. Decisions are happening without really understanding what the consequences could be. So it could be from a, do we want to build? Do we want to buy? Sometimes the gut reaction is we'll just build it because we can do it, or we'll just buy it because it's cheaper, or maybe cheaper from the long run to go after it that way. I've seen different ITSM tools or service management tools. I've seen that decision of, do we handle that inshore or in-house, or do we push that to a third party? The full picture is not always there.
Yeah. So if information is buried, like what are some strategies a PM can use to unbury them? And then also make those trade-offs more visible? Yeah,
I think you're jumping ahead of me for sure. I'd love to jump in that. So we can jump to that next slide of that. What is that decision?
Well, we can stay on. Well, we'll come back to that. Sorry, I didn't mean to jump in too far.
All good. No, so if we're looking at what decision drag is, right? I think decision drag is the main culprit of what's preventing project managers and PMO teams being able to deliver and move the business ahead. You can see, identified 4 ways that we see decision drag. And PMs and leadership are both asking themselves the same question of, why am I having to follow up on this question, or this, follow up 3 or 4 different times before we make an answer? Why is this risk log, whether it's from a RAID perspective or just a risk log, why is that not even being looked at until it becomes a full-blown issue, right? What that whole thing is decision drag itself. And, my belief is that because of decision drag, leadership teams are not able to get that, not to get the insight that they need, and therefore it's leaving that confidence in the PM, confidence in the PM team, the project management team or the project team. It's providing areas for that trust to be brought down, not to be built up.
Yeah, and it seems like it would be, if I'm the executive and I'm not really running the project day to day, I mean, I wouldn't even know, what I'm supposed to be helping you make decisions on. So I can see where that would Yeah, I mean, I can see where if you end up not making good, clear decisions on a timely way, then that's for sure going to make all your work get delayed.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's where there's no visibility into what the trade-offs are for your decision then, Steve, right? It's just this idea that, hey, I need you to decide, here you go, have at it, right? Where if info's difficult to find, that's going to make it really pretty certain that that's going to be the case for your decisions as far as that's concerned, right? Or if the operating system that we have in play, right, Brian, the kind of processes that we're using don't get us everything that we need to make that one decision right here and there, and we don't have to keep kicking the can down, right?
Yeah.
So
what, and then add that the yes and to that is ownership. So who is supposed to be making those decisions, right? So if you don't know what you're supposed to make a decision on, and we don't understand what the consequences are for if I go left or if I go right, but if I don't know I'm the one who's supposed to be doing it, then I'm waiting for somebody else to take the lead and go after it, and we're all just sort of standing around. So understanding who owns that is also one of those drivers for that decision drag, for sure.
Yeah, and it seems like the projects these days are just more and more complex because we're integrating all this technology into it, and you're gonna have, it's not gonna always be like the same executive. It's gonna be all over the place with how all the different players.
Yeah. Yes.
Security, AI
right.
now. What about data security? What about all this other stuff? I mean, I don't know of very many projects that don't at least involve some level of technology these days.
Well, I come out of the IT PMO, and I've tried to repeat many times as I can, is that my worldview is there's no such thing as a IT project. They're all business projects with an IT component to it. But certainly today, every project that we're seeing being done that is going to drive the business forward or to protect the business, like to secure and support the business, is technology. It's technology based, right? So it has something there, the reason they're going after that, for sure.
Well, I mean, even things that you would think aren't, a restaurant's not a tech company. Well, they are now, because they get tied into the Uber Eats, and they get tied into their accounting systems. It's credit cards, all that stuff. Most businesses and most projects are going to have tech.
Not to your point, not as their driver of who they are, but they're definitely leveraging it, right?
Meaning that, well, there's going to be some aspect of it in there that makes this more challenging. Yeah,
it does. Yeah, for sure. So as that is being completed, and as we go through sort of understanding, if you look at this next slide, you can see what the actual impact is or what that motion looks like. So this is a very rudimentary a funnel, right? So at the very, very top, that's where work enters, requests come in, projects get kicked off, teams are starting to get to work. And then we have the messy middle, right? This is where things begin to slow down. This is where, either for technology reasons, business process reasons, human reasons, right? Whatever that is, this is where we begin to look at information is getting buried in the tools that nobody's looking at, right? Decisions get delayed because the right people just aren't in the room. Priorities compete for attention. I'm sure we all have heard about the shiny object syndrome, right? The FOMO, that we have to move the AI because AI is everything right now, but that's the viewpoint. But so is the cloud, and so is data, right? As we go through it, it's that the competition for priorities is just, in this time period, is at such a high level, right? And then it goes back to what we said earlier. The inability or the unknown from an ownership perspective, what authority has been given to the project manager, to the operational lead, to the technology lead, to the whatever that is, like who is actually making those decisions. So if we have all that sort of stuck in the middle where that decision drag is defined, it's not because we weren't working hard, right? It's not from a lack of effort. It's that broken project operating system that wasn't designed to move decisions where they need to be put in place. So then we have that pressure. So as it's weighing down, we need to do all this work, but we have this gap that's filled. It's automatically going to lead to the pressure of things showing up late, right? Projects are behind, budgets are being revised, strategies. We thought this tool was going to give a strategy, but then it doesn't at the very end. Or we thought by making these updates. I had spoke with the CFO recently, where they said we've been doing capital level projects, so $1 million and higher for the last 15, 20 years. and I don't see where they have been helpful. Right? There's this money spent, there's this cost to them, but I don't see where the ROI has come out. Right? So that those issues that are there always lead to what do we have on the screen. It always leads to rework. It always leads to escalations, and it always leads to the project manager, the project team, or the PMO in some sort of firefighting mode. As we dump everything on top without a process, without a system to go after where these decisions should be going, it just gets more and more pressure on that team to be created.
But now we need those heroes, right?
And now it relies on those heroes 100%.
Yeah.
Project managers are the drivers of the business, right? They have the skill set to go after and to break through those silos, to break through getting those decisions made. If they're in a system, in a systematic way, let's support them to do that. Absolutely. So we don't want them to be needed as heroes, but we know that they behave as heroes today for sure.
Yeah, and you might need all your team to be heroes in some of the scenarios.
Right. Absolutely. So if we look at this next slide, this is looking at those project management heroes. If we really believe that decision drag is that cause or is that reason, and going back to my point that the system was not designed to support those decision making, then we need something to change. And I believe that we make that change. That change starts at the role of the project manager. Now, I'm not looking at revamping what a project manager is called from project manager to project leader or delivery person. And we all have either been that accidental project manager or that certified project manager. There's the spectrum of where people sit from a project management perspective. But if we support if we support this idea that decision drag is a major pain point in their lives, we want to make sure we give them the tools that they need to support the company. So if we look on this left-hand side, again, looking at where all the time goes today, it's your basic work of having to be in a heroic sense, right? So it's tracking the work, reporting statuses. It's not true project management value. It's chasing alignment in teams. It's managing those gaps. And none of those are bad things. But that's not where the value of project management and project manager comes from. What we want to do is have them focus on this right-hand side. We want to shift to the right-hand side, which is making sure that project managers are able to frame decisions before they stall, that we're able to make those trade-offs visible, communicate those trade-offs. Here are our decision points before we have conflicts, right? And then we really want to, again, getting back to that, who owns that decision before it becomes a problem. All in all, we're just trying to enable clarity within the leaders to help us move with confidence. The focus of the role, with the AI focus of AI is going to take away project management. It's not. It's going to enable project managers to be better at their jobs if they have a system in place to do that. And I don't think project management is a different job. I don't think it's a harder job. I just think there's a different focus of where project managers need to be looked at.
Well, and I think if you look at the left this is not this or that. You'll need to track and report and align in order to actually even do the two framing, making trade-offs invisible. But if you're not thinking the right side, like the priority should be on the right side, and the left side is just kind of incidentally your base. You take the information you're tracking and use it to frame the decisions.
Yeah, it's not we only do these, right? It's we do these and it's the yes and mindset, right? Of yes, we understand that there's some coordination that has to be done, and we're looking forward to, we as a unit of people, project managers and project management leaders, we're looking forward to be able to leverage technology to help us to get there. But we just, again, need to make sure that we have our processes and our systems in place so that technology can support us in doing that. And so we can sell what we do best as project managers to our teams and up, as we always have to do with every new project.
Yeah.
So if we look at this next page is, I think, where we're beginning to get more practical, right? So what are the decisions that I think leaders need in order to make those decisions? It's definitely not more reports. We have plenty of data, plenty of reports. right? It's not more dashboards and it's not more status updates, because we can provide that. But as we talked about earlier, it's giving the right information at that time, right? It's the right report, it's the meaningful information. So in order to build into that meaningful information, we've got these very simple things that are complex in the nature of it, right? So again, we've already mentioned a little bit. So making sure that leaders have a clean line of sight. We don't need a status dump. We need a focused view of what actually matters right now. What needs the attention? What is at risk? What is that decision that we need to make today, or decision we need to make tomorrow to help us continue with that momentum? If we can provide that leadership, that clear line of sight, we don't have to chase information for them. The second one, I think these are all equal in importance. The second one is that visible trade-offs. Like, leaders cannot decide if those consequences are hidden from them, if they're invisible. So if we prioritize this action or this project, what do we need to slow down, or what do we need to add? What has to come off? So we have to sort of balance in those trade-offs as we work through, from a project perspective, from a portfolio perspective. That decision-making tree is going to be really, really important. And then finally, again, I've harped these three things pretty well today so far. It's that defined ownership. What is it that we know the project manager is managing the project, but we need to understand who makes those decisions, either within the project or within the project steering committee or within the governance, right? What does that look like? And where do we need to move up? When do we move up to the different levels based on the needs? As we've said already, that when ownership is unclear, decisions stall, things get deferred, they revisit them 4 or 5 different times. And as we look at decisions, we want to make sure this decision is made by this person. So every open item gets a name next to it, right? For that accountability and that driving, the driving force of that decision. And I mean, I tell leaders that these 3 things they're not, the PMO is not withholding these, right? They want to go after, they want to provide this to you so that we can get these moving ahead. I know that there's some leaders think that the project management office is a support only, admin only. They slow me down. And by giving these 3 areas, it helps to build that trust. It helps to build that confidence in both the leadership in the PMO and the PMO in that leadership as well.
Yeah.
As we look at these things, right? Those are the clearest things. And then this next page is sort of the really where the rubber hits the road of putting this into practice. If we look on the left-hand side, this is sort of where we are today and where we want to be tomorrow on the right-hand side.
Well, and I do, who doesn't start with this is where we are, right? That's the tendency or the natural thing that you're going to do.
Yeah.
When you come to a meeting, you're like, oh, this is what you did last week because you're proud of it or whatever. And then, you're not thinking what's happening right now.
Right. And then in your status report to go out on emails once a week, once a month, whatever, from a quarterly perspective, all this information is necessary, but what can we do to step it up a notch? What can we do to really set that PM up so that business acumen, right? That PMI talks about a lot of making sure we speak the language of the business or of the technology set, depending on where you are. But going from taking that mind shift from not just starting with the status, right? Not giving the sort of progress report, as I mentioned earlier, green, yellow, red. We moved this, we finished that, we pushed this out. That's great from a snapshot, from maybe just a dashboard. Here's the project, here's the color. That's great. But when we need to be moving things forward, we need to be more clear. We need to say, here's a decision, or here's what needs a decision. And I've helped coach PMs to say, okay, at the very beginning of the status, the subject line, you may have project 80-10-10 green. But once you get into, once they go into it and begin to scan through it, we need to decision things up front. Like, this is where I need a decision, because that's the nitty gritty of the leadership. That's what they need to help them communicate up, but also to communicate down to the project team as well. So, and that changes the tone of that entire meeting by saying, this is what we need. And then that natural next step is, instead of describing the issue that we're seeing, we don't need to report the problem, but we would like to report the problem, but also here's the solution, or here's the potential direction we can go after that. So if we continue this way, if we go after X, then Y is the impact. So be able to frame that choice to help them move along. Just again, it adds more confidence to the leader that they can provide what is being asked for and move that project further down the pathway, for sure.
Yeah, I definitely think it's a good idea to get whatever an especially if you have an executive or clients on your call, to try to get to the essence of what they need to do there in the first 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And then you can get into all the details towards the end of the call. It seems better.
Yeah, it's I had a former colleague define communication to executives as a pyramid or as a triangle, right? Give that the bluff, right? The bottom line up front, the very beginning. That way, if they want to stay and they can stay, they see what they have to do, and then they can move on to something else, or they can go and drill down into it later on in the deck, or that's the area you want to go after. And that's what we're trying to do from this. It's here's the decisions, right? And here's the impact if you make this decision. And then, just understanding that this last one, as an example, just from prioritization perspective, that instead of letting priorities compete, we need to say what those trade-offs are going to be. If we do this, then this may slow down. If we want to pick up this new project because this is the latest and greatest that's coming into our world, something has to come off this. There is always a capacity limit that we can do, a capability and capacity that we can really understand. So if we want to do something new, I need you to tell me what we're going to take off, right? To balance out that team, because as much as we believe our project managers are heroes, we don't need them to act as a heroic way all the time, because that leads to burnout very, very quickly.
Yeah, it seems like if you can let them decide the priority, then you're not going to waste as much time in that middle.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So if we go after these rule of three practical skills, these are the same skills that project managers have today. They're the same meetings they have today. We just want to have those conversations a little differently to set up for that correct decision making.
Yeah, and it looks like everyone's liking the bluff. I never heard of that until just now. So,
bottom line up front, man, that's the best. That saves many conversations. All those meetings we sit in that could have been an email, bluff is the answer for that, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, and also too, like we were getting back to, there are some, we work with all kinds of different people. You're always going to be working with all kinds of different people out there. There's the executives that they don't care about anything. They just want the one little thing. And then you do have your analyzers out there that want to know the ins and outs. So, if I do think that getting to the essence in the beginning then allows the people that don't, the executives that are just the high level don't have to wait until the end.
Yeah. Well, that's the beauty of like those 15-minute stand-ups, right? It's the give me the bottom line up front to make sure I know the direction. Okay, we're good. Okay, now we can move on. Being able to have those from a standardized way of a standardized system of support for those projects, right? The operating system that just leads to better confidence and better trust in you as the PM, and then that grows to you as the PMO, which then grows to leadership and grows to the business itself. So it has its roots out in everything for sure.
Yeah.
So once we begin to move from left to right, from the way we have to the way we're working today into the way we want to work tomorrow, right? And whether it's in practical skills or whether giving the information, what we begin to see is that on a project level, that's easy. We'll use air quotes, right? It's easy, but that challenge would be as we move ahead, how do we keep that consistently? So we can't rely on we can't rely on individual effort to keep that level of clarity visible across the entire portfolio. We want to make sure we can then take that information and then replicate the how and the who and the what throughout our PMO. And the best way to do that for me is this is when we now begin to get that right tool into the picture, right? So we've built out our processes, we built out our systems, we built our expectations, we build that trust. Now let's put technology on top of that to help us do that, and do that at a speed and at a level that just helps us expand and get our momentum moving faster.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that, that's one of the key, wins in implementing a tool like Project Insight or a process to this, right? Is it's something that goes into your operating system, as Brian's been describing, right? And to help amplify what you're doing, right? It makes it a lot easier if Steve doesn't need to come to me for a status update because he can go right to the program that I'm in charge of right here, which is what we're looking at, and dig into the data himself. And that applies for if Steve is the kind of executive, which he is, right, that wants to come in and look at the data and see all of the projects and see what automatic health indicators are kicking on, not necessarily just I said it's red or I said it's green, so don't look over here. What's kicking on based on KPIs, right? Who's in charge of it? This is one that Brian mentioned time and time again, ownership, making sure that everybody understands what their role is here. So it's quick for Steve to come in here and say, hey, Mathew, I need to talk to you about your projects. I can filter these by you, and let's run through these guys right here, if that's what he wants to dig into. If Steve is hey, give me what I need to focus on right now, and then we can get into the weeds later on. And that's very much how I am as well. I can come into the decisions part of this program where I'm seeing all of the roll-ups from any of these projects that are within this. And again, I have the same kind of filter idea where I can choose if I'm looking at active or inactive or whatever it is. But Steve can then quickly identify, hey, it looks like you've got a go or no go on this project. Talk to me about it, right? Walk me through what this looks like on that project level, and then we can have that conversation, and we'll go through that in a minute. But the joy, though, of having an application like this is, again, I can look at it in the way that makes sense to me. So if Steve wants that timeline view, he can go to the Gantt and see everything that's happening within this program. If Steve wants to get into the priorities, because like Brian walked us all through, making sure we all have clear understanding of what the most important pieces are, we can. And with the appropriate permissions, I can even modify this, right? If something came in and said, hey guys, this fire has been put out, we can kind of take a breather on this project for a little bit, but now we've got to ramp up this guy, right? We can kind of move them around as we need to, which makes it really nice because now there is no more chasing. There is no, a lot of those left-hand columns are eliminated immediately because we knew what we needed to track. We put it into one central place that we could do so, and now we can execute on that. So the other part to this equation, and I could get into all the risks or the issues or any of the kind of core project pieces that we're tracking through these program views. Or if I'm a leader who, again, is a just the facts kind of person, and I do want to see this sort of report view here where they can move the columns around and they can insert what they want, but now it becomes this live kind of document that we can comment and collaborate back and forth on and have that piece, all the while keeping those same lines of visibility into what's the priority, who's in charge, etc. Right? So this is how we are able to do this in Project Insight, from that higher level of executive. If I'm a project leader, though, and I'm only in charge of one project of many here, right? We've got a lot of projects, and I'm only in charge of a handful of these. I can also just go into the project level and do those same kind of components that we've been talking about, updating if something's done or not. Moreover, if my resources are using Project Insight, they can update it themselves, right?
Yeah, that's really a key. I mean, if everything's in a system, then it does enable you to be able to spend more time on what we were talking about earlier. And if you can get if the team members to mark stuff off, that saves you as a project manager a lot of time. So, and we have customers where everybody uses the whole system, and then we have some where just the PMs use the system. But if you can get your team engaged to have everybody who does tasks to be involved, that's huge.
I think we've got research, right, Steve, that says, a PM saving anywhere from 2 to 7 hours per week by implementing something like this.
Mhm.
I think it's closer to that 7 hour mark when everybody's in here logging their own events, right? Whether that's planned or actuals or anything
Yeah.
else, right? You can go through and do that. So
Right, and this does, obviously this is where all the tracking comes in and all of that, and it
Right.
is up to the PM to take this information and shape it, and or make sure that you're viewing the key parts that you want to use to help you with finding the decisions and eliminating the drag and getting the executives what they need to see. Some executives love to get into these tools and some don't, and it's just kind of the way it is.
Yeah.
I think, though, the clear part is I know where all my ownership is. I know where my central location of everything is. All of those automation pieces help check off those boxes. This
sure.
isn't a silver bullet, though, right? To the point of what Brian's been touching. This is a part of my operating system. If we don't already work like this, this isn't going to come save us and give us all of these time savings. We need to have the foundations in play, right, to do that. While we can help create those, that needs to happen as a part of this.
Right. And where Project Insight comes in, it helps automate those processes that would be really time consuming if you weren't using a system.
The one that I really like around that, and I honestly wasn't going to show this, but because we've been talking a lot about that, is our AI meeting minutes, because it will pull, if I paste in a transcript here, it will pull the decisions out of this conversation and who needs to make them. So that way, at least it helps keep our accountability of who needs to do what right here in one spot. So then I know, hey, Ashley needs to, do whatever this action item's in, or if there's a decision from that conversation, it'd be the same. So
yeah, and it just popped all that in there. And then when you hit save, then those people get assigned the decisions or actions or tasks automatically.
Right. So whether they're looking at it periodically from a high level of, the program view or daily, they can have what they need. The other part of this equation, which I think is really, Brian, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm hearing so much from what you're mentioning of, I'm shifting away from the boxes and creating the value in what a PM should be providing to the organization, right? I'm not just saying, Brian, did you do your work? You did? Great. Check. Steve? Roadblocks, issues? Okay, we're good, right? So, sorry, right, Brian?
No, 100%. It's taking the legwork, that administrative legwork of checking the boxes, was it done? And one is providing accountability for the person who owns it, right? That ownership piece at the individual action level. But then you can, because of the system, the way the system is set up here, from the way Project Insight is set up, it can then take that and roll it up to where those decisions can be made faster, because the application has laid the groundwork based on the information that's been entered into that. 100%. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the goal, right? If I'm here and I'm on this status report for one of my decisions that I need to make, I've got a go or no go on this project, right? Is what I'd be looking at here, where I can see, what's happening. If I go into one of the other views associated with this project, from my status report and go or no go, and then if I go into one of these other views, I can go into that task list and see, hey, this project's supposed to start next month. Can we do this? That's the real question that the leaders are asking me. Or what's the cost? This may have been, knowing that this starts next month, it's not a typical project because we typically do, the next quarter of what we're going to be working on. So maybe Steve tried to get me to slide this one in and I need to give him a little executive pushback, right, on, hey, I can or I can't do this. So let me tell you why. What we allow for you to do is to come in here and create these what if scenarios around this project work. So first and foremost, I can come in from a resource perspective and just simply say, hey, Steve, you want me to take this project on? Let me run a quick report to see if any of my resources are going to be impacted by this. This takes into consideration everything else that everybody's doing. If I'm going to start to go over, I'm going to start to see red or yellows, specifically yellow in the instance because of this planning project that we're working, right? So you can quickly identify what that is. It looks like my accountant team's going to get a little bump, but that's good because they've got nothing else going on during this time. So I'm happy to give them something to do, right? So that's the simplest way that you can do one of these what ifs. The other way that you can do is really, if I have to get strategic about this project, right? Steve is my boss. He tells me he wants this in here. How can I make that happen, right? I can come in here and basically say, what if I use these variations on the project plan that we created? Those can be around time. So maybe I'm going to start this project in June or in July instead of in June. And if I do that, I can come in and say, what if I use option A? And I can rerun this report and see what the difference is going to be from my team. And I can see, actually, if I do that, I'm going to run into some issue with Christopher, some work he already had planned in July. So maybe we do need to rush to get this thing done. This can apply to effort. This can apply to time. This can apply to who's on the resources as a whole. I can create, as you can see here, multiple what if scenarios where you can decide what that is. But this way, my leadership team is coming to me for my expertise to say, yes, we can commit to this work. Here's when my teams have the resources. And then of the flip of that, if I'm a financial person, right, because I've got to stay within my budget, I can do the same thing on those parts of the tool as well, where I'm saying, hey, Steve, you want me to bring this in? It's going to be $18,000 extra dollars this year to bring this work in. Show me the money, buddy. Are you okay with me using that? Great. Let's move it forward, right? So, the key again, though, is these aren't silver bullets, but through the implementation of a tool like Project Insight, I can check off a lot of those left boxes that are often the PMs are chasing, and then I can more easily show my value to the executive team, right?
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing: you're doing this anyway.
Oh, 100%. Oh,
We're trying to make it easier to actually raise what the decision might be.
Yeah,
that's right.
We have those gaps, right, and we're already filling those gaps up, but using the tools like the what if analysis piece to it, you're significantly moving those gaps in faster and closer, right? Leveraging the technology to help do that of work. To your point, Steve, we're already doing as a PM anyway.
Yeah, I mean, you're probably got the 3 schedules, and you're looking at 3 different Microsoft project files, and then you're wondering, well, if I do this, what is like my overall capacity going to be across the whole enterprise? Well, now you're going to go do an Excel spreadsheet. So, those are the things that we're trying to help you get out of that. But it also requires a mindset of, I'm not just trying to do a bunch of tasks. And like what Brian was saying in the beginning of this thing is, as PMs, I mean, I've got caught up in that myself where you just get going and going and going and going, and you're getting a lot done, but maybe it's not the right things.
Yeah, directionally you're over here and you should be over here, right? Or you're a little bit further off because you're going through that, which I think is the whole principle of the operating system, which to that point, if you have questions on getting those, pieces of your organizational operating system in play, contact Brian here. We've got his email address. You can do that now or anytime into the future if you're watching that. If you have questions on how Project Insight can be put to use for your organization to be a part of that bigger operating system that you're using, please contact us. Or if you want to get us both on the line, send us a email to both of us, and we'll have a joint session and kind of talk through the holisticness of your unique organization and what you've got going. So. Otherwise, we appreciate everybody being here. Get out your phones. It's time to claim that PDU. So scan this out. You'll enter your information. We'll get this sent out before the end of the week, although usually we get it out before the end of the day tomorrow. If you've got any questions, please use the chat. We've really appreciated the wonderful dialogue that's been going back and forth there already. Project Insight as a whole, Steve and I join us for our next Power tutorial, which will be on Wednesday the 20th, where we're going to be talking about project financials. So we're going to get into the weeds of labor, non-labor, money we're bringing in because of things sold, money that's going out because of things sold, all of that. So we look forward to having you join us if you can. Follow on social. Brian, Steve, thank you guys so very much. Brian, wonderful.
Brian.
Great expertise. We really appreciate having you with us.
Hey guys, I appreciate it. It was fun.
Mm-hmm.